Hi, friends. Welcome to Little House on the Prairie, Young Historians. We're so excited to be here with you today. For our activity today, you are going to need your copy of Little House on the Prairie. You'll also need your journal and a writing tool of some kind. And, oh, of course, your wagon kit. Let's not forget about that. And I just want to remind you all, you can come pick those up here at the museum on Tuesday between the hours of 10 and 2. So after you pick up your kit, you'll be ready for this lesson. Just pause it if you need to get your materials together, because you're going to definitely want to have them in your hands as we get going. Good morning and welcome back to Fraser Farmstead. We're so excited to be here with all of you young historians. Miss Karen and Miss Lori and I are going to read along with you today. Before we get started, I want to just talk to you a little bit about why we chose this book as our first book club with our young historians. This book was written by a woman who actually lived these experiences, and she was your age when she started having these experiences. So you'll be reading about Ma, Pa, Laura, the author, and a major character in this series, Mary, and eventually their new baby, Carrie. So those are the characters in this series of life on the American frontier. Now, it's important for you to understand before we read today that Mary's pa was in charge of all the decision making. And at the time of the beginning of this story, he and his children and wife are actually living in the state of Wisconsin. He hears about the possibility of the family getting land and being able to create a new settlement for he and his family, which would give them more opportunities and a better quality of life. So he announces to everybody in the family, we are loading up our possessions and we are moving to the state of Kansas. Now, the difference between your father or mother telling you that today and in 1850 is that we didn't have the technologies we have today. All we had were what we grew, what we made, what we harvested from the trees, what we were able to get from the animals that were on the land at the time. There were no supermarkets. There were no automobiles. There were very few of the things that we enjoy today. So as we start our read, one of the things that we're going to ask you to do in your journal is be thinking about what you would take today. If your ma and pa said to you, we have to pack up everything we need, we're going to be moving to a new state, what would you pack in your car? So in your journal for day 1, I'll show you how you can make a list of all the things you would take today. And the reason this is important is because as we read and think, we're going to discover, back in the 1850s, we had to take very different things. And we had to think about things in a very different way. So after we read a few chapters, you'll know exactly what we're talking about. And as you assemble your wagon and start to pack it and put the essentials and decorate it, you're going to think about everything Ma, Pa, and the family had to endure, because you're going to want to make sure that you park the things or pack the things that you need. Let's get started. So if you'll open your book to page 1, the first chapter is called Going West. Try to read along with us. If I read a little too fast, it's okay. Just do the best job you can. Here we go. A long time ago, when all the grandfathers and grandmothers of today were little boys and little girls, or very small babies, or perhaps not even born, Pa and Ma and Mary and Laura and baby Carrie left their little house in the big woods of Wisconsin, and they drove away and left it lonely and empty in the clearing among the big trees, and they never saw that house again. They were going to Indian country. And the reason they call this Indian country is because there were many places in the Americas that the Europeans, which would be all of us, our white ancestors, came from other continents The Osage were living in this area of Kansas, and the government, the leaders at the time, said, we're going to make an agreement with the Osage, and they're going to let some of the white Europeans settle here. So that's why they decided to move. They thought they'd have opportunities. Pa said there were way too many people in the big woods now. Quite often, Laura heard the ringing thud of an axe, which was not Pa's axe, top of page 2, or the echo of a shot that did not come from his gun. The path that went by the little house had become a road. Almost every day, Laura and Mary stopped their plane and stared in surprise at a wagon slowly creaking by on that road. Wild animals would not stay in a country where there were so many people, and Pa did not like to stay either. He liked a country where the wild animals lived without being afraid. He liked to see the little fawns and their mothers looking at him from the shadowy woods, and the fat lazy bears eating berries in the wild berry patches. In the long winter evenings, he talked to Ma about the western country. In the west, the land was level and there were no trees. The grass grew thick and high. There were wild animals that wandered and fed as though they were in a pasture that stretched much farther than a man could see. And there were no settlers, which means there were no other people, which Pa liked the idea of. Only the Osage lived there. One day in the very last of the winter, Pa said to Ma, "Seeing you don't object, I've decided to go see the West. I've had an offer for this place, and we can sell it now for as much as we'd ever likely get. It'd be enough to help us get a start in our new country." "Oh, Charles, must we go now?" Ma said. "The weather was so cold and the snug house was so comfortable." "If we are going this year, we must go now," said Pa. "We can't get across the Mississippi after the ice breaks." So Pa sold the little house. He sold the cow and the calf. He made hickory bows and fastened them upright to the wagon box. Ma helped him stretch white canvas over them. In the thin dark before morning, Ma gently shook Mary and Laura till they got up. In firelight and candlelight, she washed and combed them and dressed them warmly. Over their long red flannel underwear, she put wool petticoats and wool dresses and long wool stockings. She put their coats on them and their rabbit-skinned hoods and their red yarn mittens. Everything from the little house was in the wagon except the beds and tables and chairs. They did not need to take those because Pa could always make new ones. There was a thin snow on the ground. The air was still cold and dark. The bare trees stood up against the frosty stars. Top of page 4. But in the east the sky was pale, and through the gray woods came lanterns with wagons and horses, bringing Grandpa and Grandma and aunts and uncles and cousins. So many people were going to take this trip with them.
No, they just came to say goodbye.
Oh, thank you for correcting me. I'm glad you clarified. That's what good readers do. They read and make sure they're understanding the story.
Because they'd never see him again.
Yeah.
And imagine what that would feel like.
That'd be
Very,
sad.
it'd be very sad.
Mary and Laura clung tight to their rag dolls, and they didn't say anything. The cousins stood around and looked at them. Grandma and all the aunts hugged and kissed them, and hugged and kissed them again, saying goodbye. Okay, we're going to pause right here because we don't want our reading to take too long. Your job is to continue reading on as Ma, Pa, and the children start their journey towards the West. A couple other things I'd like to talk about. As you read, I want you to be thinking about the things that you would need to pack into your wagon to make this long journey safely. We talked a little bit. Oh, and I forgot to grab a pencil. Oops. While Miss Linda is getting us a pencil, we're going to go ahead and do our guessing game activity. Each time we get together with you, we're going to hold up an object from long, long ago. And the first of our young historians that are registered for this class write in comments what they think this item is and how it might have been used by the pioneers. The first person to comment correctly gets entered into a drawing for a very special gift at the end of our book club experience. So take a close look. What do you think about this item, and how do you suppose people used it? Remember to write your thinking in the comments so that we can respond to the person that has the correct idea.
This is very, very heavy. Let me tell you that. I mean, it's hard for me to hold it.
That's
very
a
heavy.
good hint.
Yeah, that's a hint.
Weighs a lot. Well, historians, we can't wait for you to come pick up your kit and to start reading Little House on the Prairie. We would like you to read all the way through chapter 5 so that next week you'll be ready to start the reading and the activities for chapter 6 and beyond. Have a great day. Talk to you soon. Bye now.